How many Jews are there in the world? 15 to 20 million? How many Muslims are there in the world? 2 billion. Israel has dropped more bombs in Gaza than people who have died. Less than one person per bomb. Look at someone like 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭, who used to actually make sense and has just gone completely off the rails. Everything to her is about the Jews. They get what the real threat to the West is. And it's not the Jews. It's people that are actual colonizers that have colonized half the world. And if you're not careful, they'll colonize your country here. The UK is really screwed. If you're not a Zionist, why? Why do you think Israel has no right to exist? They've made us sick of saying it, but all it takes, if somebody really wants that war to end, is release those hostages. I think finally Israel sent a message going, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're a terrorist, we're going to get you. Every kid everywhere should be safe and secure. And the only way to do that is to rid the world of these savages.
Your average Joe that watches your work would think, fuck doing that. I want to say a quick thank you to our sponsors, Gold Seal. I use their products every single day, and now I finally get to work with them. I use their products for anti-inflammatory, reduced anxiety, better sleep, and mental clarity. I'm going to put a link to their website in the description, along with a 10% discount code for you to take advantage of. Go and have a look at their website, see if there's anything in there for you. I hope you enjoy this week's episode, and good health. Avi, they call you the Australian Tommy Robinson. Why is that?
Tommy and me are completely different people, whether it's his activism, his balls, like, dude. I wish I was as tough and as brave and as everything as Tommy, but there's nothing. I've hung around him for years now, and I've seen he just can face every situation. He's been locked up how many times now for doing what he does?
Too many.
I've never had the guts to do that. So when people say that, I take it as definitely a compliment, but it's nothing compared to reality. In reality, there is only one Tommy, and he's the king.
You say that. I mean, I totally agree. Tommy's courage is it's like nothing I've ever seen before. The resilience is unbelievable. He's like the Terminator. He will not let the media establishment, lefty, lunatic.
Even in real life, like I remember when we used to hang out here for, 7 years? Oh, gosh, time flies. And, we would hang out and he would talk to everyone, his mates with everyone, he's cool with everyone. And yeah, I've got that similar thing. I'll talk to anyone. I'm social, can chill even with people who dislike me. But the moment they turn, like the moment it becomes aggressive and they turn on him, Tommy just flips, switches, which is like, you've seen that play out so many times, but I've seen it in real life. And to me, it's like, it's the fight or flight, but it's just to a degree of courage, just in the fact that he'll walk around by himself all the time when he's so recognizable. There are a lot of people that want to hurt him. I would be too scared to do that.
Do you not get that in Australia? I
do get it, but honestly, I take precautions. Tommy doesn't. Like he goes and rides a train by himself. I'm cautious about where and when I go to places to ensure my safety, because I know that there are people that want to hurt me. Tommy never does that. He doesn't seem to think about that. He just has an objective, and he's got a life mission, and he just follows it. And his is driven by like his complete devotion to the campaign. And there are things that I'm super passionate about, for sure, and maybe as passionate as Tommy is on his mission. But I feel like that driving force that he has, there's no one I really know that has it. So when people say, "Oh, you're Tommy Robinson," I laugh it off, and it's like a badge of honor, even if they mean it in a disrespectful way. But it's in reality, no.
Well, you're definitely considered in the UK to be a fearless journalist. And when you said about his campaign, what's your campaign?
It's funny because if you look back at how I even got into this space, was originally like I was in the Israeli army, and then I opened gyms in Melbourne, and it was one of the Gaza operations back then in, I think, probably 2014, where I wasn't political. I couldn't I couldn't tell you the difference between left and right. I wouldn't have known anything. I cared about certain issues. I obviously cared about Israel. I went and served. But then I got home and I switch on the TV and the ABC, that's our BBC, and I see them reporting the story of what's happening in Gaza. And it was exactly where I'd been stationed for most of my service, my active duty. And I saw the way that they reported it and I thought, you cheeky bastards. Because they were lying through omission. They weren't completely fabricating stuff. It's like what you see every day right now coming out of Gaza, where they take half-truths, or now they rely on like things that they know are, a minute of a clip and out of whatever it is. But back then I saw it and I watched and I sat down and I saw how they portrayed this story and I'm like, holy moly, I see what you're doing there. So I decided to start. At the time, my gyms were IDF training, which was like Krav Maga, training with Israeli defense guys. So it was it made sense. So I used that platform. They were really popular gyms. And I started kind of voicing my personal experience from, back then it was only a few years earlier during my deployment in Gaza. And it created, obviously, like, look at today, imagine doing that today. But even back then, it created a massive debate, even on my gym's pages. Some people said, you shouldn't be posting political stuff on your gym page. And at that time, I said, well, you know what? You're literally at a gym called IDF training. Our main thing that we were selling was Krav Maga. We had all these Krav Maga ex-IDF guys training it. And I was like, if you don't like it, then go to a Taekwondo gym, go to a gym that's got nothing to do with it. But then after the war, I think I enjoyed the attention and I was like, I found my voice and so I just started saying whatever I thought about anything.
In the street as well.
At first, it was just online, using the business pages, and people would turn around and go, like people who were training at the gym who were decent guys. They go, dude, like I get the Israel, but now like maybe don't spew you. And some of my takes, if I look back at them now, thank God Facebook banned those pages because I don't want to know what I thought, because I was speaking from a non-thought out political stance. It was just like the common guy that was going, I'm seeing this, and I would react to it, and I was just enjoying having a voice. And so I took it on and I go, you know what, you're right. And I opened a Facebook page in my name, and that, the rest is history. I started doing that. Then I got rid of the gyms. I worked for a political party. Then I worked for Tommy. And then now, it's been, 5 years at Rebel.
Yeah.
That was my story into it. I only got into Rebel because Tommy was the one that introduced me. And remember when I worked with Tommy and he closed down TR News. He closed TR News and I was like, all right, it was a choice of what to do. And Tommy gave me like the blessing and told everyone, Avi's going to Rebel. So like that's when I joined because of him. So
at what point during your activism before your journalism did you realise that you're no longer a normal everyday citizen? You're actually a public figure.
Yeah.
When did that dawn on you and how did that feel? Because that comes with responsibility.
I think it was when you walk down the street and you start getting recognised and people ask you for photos and you're like, oh, and it's cool. Like I don't hide it. Like if you read my book, I'm going to plug it here, Rebel from the Start. When you read it, the theme is throughout the book from my childhood till now. I'm the middle child of 17 kids. I'm an attention seeker. So, and that's why I say like Tommy, I think what I was referring to it before, Tommy's driven solely by his mission. And I feel like because he's been right so much about so many of his core important issues, now like he wants to be vindicated about his activism. Whereas like there is a real driving force in me, which is also just attention. I love attention. I love being the center of attention. I go out at night, I got to be the one in the middle that everyone's listening to, And like that's just me. You take it or leave it. That's why some people freaking hate me. And some people put up with me. But you're in an industry where you're trying to attract eyeballs. So by definition, you're an attention seeker. It is one of my defining characteristics. And I like it. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I think at least if you're doing it for something that matters, it doesn't mean I don't care about issues. There are certain issues that obviously are way closer to my heart than other issues, like anyone. But two things can be true at once. Whereas with Tommy, like, I don't think it's as driving force to him. And that's why he's so organically popular. Because one of the things, like, I remember back when he had the Facebook pages that were, back when we were allowed on Facebook, in the old early days when the internet was like the Wild West.
Long time ago now.
He would just walk down the street, jump on live, and 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people would just watch him walking down the street. And that's because people recognize a real raw personality and person, like real person. And everything else was beyond that. With me, it's not like that. I don't know why I'm putting myself down so much. But
I know you're being very humble, but again, that's another one of your qualities. But did you ever, because you reach millions of people now, did you ever expect that you would reach so many people, or that so many people felt the same way as you do? Because at the start, when you've got all these feelings and emotions, you sort of think, I feel alone. Am I alone? And there's only one way to find out, and that's grab your balls and put your voice out there. Did you ever think you would touch the hearts of so many people?
Look, I think in the early days, when you would put up a video and 2,000 people watched it, I'd just like sit with that and go, 2,000 people sat down and took the time to hear what I've got to say about, frankly, things that I had no clue about back then. Let's be honest. That's why I'm happy. Thank you, Facebook, for deleting those pages. But so in the beginning, it really was like mind blowing. Today, you kind of get used to it, and being the natural attention seeker I am, I feel like it's never enough. I'm like, we've got to get to the next level. We've got to get bigger, and the internet's ever changing. Like it's weird, but
it's freer now.
Yeah, so there was this weird era between, I think, 2018, 19 till probably Trump now. So this year, early this year, that there was like a censorship period, and I lost 1 million followers on Facebook and on different platforms, TikTok, like all these platforms.
Same.
I guess the first defining change was Elon Musk buying X, to be honest. That was the first. So that's before Trump.
And that's also put pressure on Zuckerberg to
everyone.
To loosen
I think
up.
everyone. I think YouTube. You look at YouTube now, you can talk about things again.
But I guarantee what we get into in a minute.
Yeah.
3 years ago, this interview would have been pulled because I want to move into the more dangerous side of your work, because you do put your cock on the block. You do go against some dangerous people.
I thought we were going to talk about my dick this time.
I saw you approached in public with a very, very angry Islamist. This is one of many scenes, attacks that you've come under. Yeah. I mean, he was telling you that he's going to kill you on camera. Yeah. And his friend joined in. Yeah. How on earth, how are people so audacious in Oz that they can come up to a journalist and tell him, I'm going to kill you on camera?
I don't think that's just Oz. So here, I've seen similar attacks since October 7. Here, it almost seems like it's become normalized. It's become okay, because that unholy alliance that we recognized back then between the far left and really the jihadi, the Islamist contingent in the community, they've empowered each other. And since October 7, it's like there are certain things that before October 7, nobody would have ever done, like walk up to a journalist, whether you like him or not, whether you define him as a journalist, a blogger, whatever, however you want to minimize his work or put him down or whatever. You wouldn't do that, right? But since October 7, these people, these radicals in the community have been so emboldened because the government doesn't do anything. They don't follow it up. If you imagine for 2 seconds that it was a right-wing, I'm not talking about a neo-Nazi even. I'm talking about like the proper general conservative out of frustration or anger, threaten anyone. What would happen? Like you see it here in the two-tier policing in the UK during those protests or riots or whatever you want to call it. Some of the people getting locked up for posts that they made online, whilst at the same time the Islamists who were running around with the weapons were kindly being told by the police to put it away and nobody would get in trouble. It's the same thing. So there has been this thing where the left has empowered the jihadis, and then the state has empowered both of them and told them there's no consequences for your actions. Like, how did we not end up here sooner?
Yeah. So you're being targeted really because you're a Jew, not a journalist.
It's crazy because if you asked me before October 7, I was one of those main campaigners against the abuse and the overuse of the word anti-Semitism. I hated when organisations, especially, organisations like the ADL, and in fact, I'm one of the only people that have confronted them on the streets of Davos about that, right? Because I think that before October 7, it was thrown around, and it still is thrown around at times, even a lot, when it shouldn't, okay? So, and that's the problem with calling everyone racist, everyone anti-Semitic. And now there has been an explosion of it, and there are a lot of people that I can't believe that I used to respect that are certainly, dipping their feet into a little bit of anti-Semitism. They're playing to the audience, and there is a lot of it now.
Dan Bilzerian?
He's not. He's just jumped right into it, and that's just they're clout chasers because it's so easy. You know how many times I've sat there and gone, how easy would it be? Like if attention was my only driving force, it is so tempting. Imagine me suddenly coming out tomorrow going, in fact, I think Israel's completely wrong. They're the demons of this entire. Actually, we need to just get rid of Israel, and that will solve the entire world's problem. And I'm speaking as a Jew and as a former Israeli occupational forces soldier. And mate, I would go from villain to hero overnight. I would blow up on every platform. You look at all those accounts on X, on most platforms that have blown up, trading in anti-Israel rhetoric since October 7. It is a formula and it works. And there's a reason why it works, because you have the masses. You have the far left, the far right now, and the jihadi. So, and you see them like the horseshoe theory where they actually tend to agree on everything to do with Jews, on whatever they want to call it. They have all different codes now to define it. But they agree on that, and they actually share each other's content now. Like, they're not even hiding it. And we're looking at it going, okay, we can see exactly what's happening, but it's easy because they've got the majority, at least the noisy, loud online majority. Last week or 2 weeks ago now, there was a protest in Melbourne where I didn't know if the loud, noisy, right-wing, anti-Jew were in real life as dominant as they are. So I went to a protest where I knew there were going to be Nazis, but I didn't know if the whole protest was going to be Nazis. The media told us they were all going to be Nazis. The politicians said they were all going to be Nazis. And I went there, and it actually gave me hope because I realized I think the silent majority, especially on the right, is actually not that. It's the people you're going to see at Tommy Robinson's rally. It's like your average, in Australia, the average Aussie here, the working class Brit, where they get like – they either don't know what's really going on in the Middle East, but they get, more importantly, they get what the real threat to the West is. And it's not the Jews. It's these people that are actual colonizers that have colonized half the world. And if you're not careful, they'll colonize your country here, which is what Tommy's been warning about for years.
Yeah, he's been well ahead of the curve. See, there's two things that I want to spin into from what you've just said there. Firstly, is I want to know why the Jews get the blame for everything, because it's well above my pay grade. I mean, even I get accused on X of being paid by the Jews. It's like, fuck are you talking about? A, what does that even mean? But also, do you think that a lot of these big Western influencers are being paid to push Palestinian propaganda?
Yeah.
Because really, what do young guns in the West really know about the conflict over there? It's very complex. It backdates like many, many years. What do they really know? How come they're now experts all of a sudden, like Dan Bilzerian? Because I watch him and I think, what in God's name are you playing at?
Yeah, so look, I don't think all of them get paid. Some of them, for sure, in one way or another, probably are. Qatar has a massive, propaganda, and they invest heavily in the West. And it's not even hidden. Like, they go out and, look at the universities around the world. They fund a lot of that. They put a lot of money behind their interests, and their interest is very anti-Israel for obvious reasons. But I think the majority of those influencers are not getting paid. Like, Qatar's not giving him a check. It's for the reason I just explained to you. Like, it's so easy.
Right.
It's a way to blow up. And if it doesn't affect you, you don't care.
But
or you think it doesn't affect you. The thing is, it's so short-sighted. Because these people, like, if you look at someone like Candace Owens, who used to actually make sense and has just gone completely off the rails, right? And everything to her is about the Jews. It's exactly what you described. And suddenly, like, she's somebody that used to talk about the threat of, radical Islam and essentially the Islamization, the colonization of the West, and where we're heading if we don't do something about it. Now, where she'll never talk about that anymore. She doesn't talk about it. She avoids it. In fact, if there's a terrorist attack, she finds a way to twist it to turn it into somehow the Jews are responsible for it, whether it's the wars in the Middle East or isn't it perfect false flag that the Islamists would do what they've been doing for 1,400 years. It must be the Jews. They just want to distract us. Like, there's always an excuse. And the reason for that is not necessarily that they're being paid. And I think everybody has their own personal other little, motivation for it. With her, I think it's as common as one of the initial things that started it was, she's a vindictive ex to Ben Shapiro. And, it started with being pissed off with the way she was pushed out of Daily Wire, and then it just, it steamrolled into something bigger. And then the effects of seeing how you blow up, trading on the Jew hatred, you're like, oh, I'm going to keep doing this. I think for her, it's costing her because she was a mainstream kind of figure. Now she doesn't get invited to anything mainstream. She's become the fringe, right? But for a lot of people who are nobodies, that are trying to create content or want to become something online, it's just a quick and easy way to do it. It is so are you getting paid? Yeah, you are, because at the end of it, you're going to get paid from YouTube ads or TikTok or whatever, but you don't necessarily. No one has to hand you cash. And some people just, because they want, a lot of people want to be famous today. So it's just an easy way to do it.
Well, here's the question then. How did we get here? So if you were to be critical of your own religion,
yep,
what things would you be critical about?
The religion?
Yeah, on a whole. So The Telegraph, they're a trusted media outlet in the UK. Yep. They recently reported that 1 in 5 Brits are now anti-Semitic.
Yep.
Why?
Okay, so there are different questions. If you're asking me why, well, it's a mathematical game, right? In the last 2 years, everybody...
Why and how would you critique Judaism as well?
So I'll tell you why they're different. So Judaism within the religion, like, I'm not a religious person. I love the tradition. I go to synagogue more for the tradition. I want my kids to be proud of who they are. Generations, thousands of years of generations of my people have gone through atrocity after atrocity, and so time after time, barely came out of it for me to be here today and to be a tiny minority in the world. Which goes into the answer to the broader question is, if you're wondering why, how many Jews are there in the world? I think there's 15 to 20 million in total. Right? How many Muslims are there in the world? 2 billion. Okay, so that's a starting point, right? So you've got there are, like, I don't know how many religions in India alone has more people a part of it than Judaism around the world, right? So Jews are a tiny minority. Then you have Islam, which is a majority, and which is 2 billion people, and the vast majority of them, I'm not saying all Muslims, but the vast majority of them do not like Jews. And you can blame it on Israel, but nonsense, because it goes back, we can get into that whole discussion, but it goes back, it's an ideological hatred towards Jewish people, right? And those that don't, they ignore that text. They ignore that text and whatever. It's a bit like Christians who don't hate gays or whatever. I think Christianity is different because it has reformed in itself and progressed, right? Whereas Islam really hasn't. It's still stuck in the 7th century. So the starting point is 2 billion there. And then you've got the far left in the West, which for years now have just trying to bring in more of those Muslims. And to them, they view the world as oppressed and oppressor. Everything's like that. Colonizer, colonized, and white and colored. And to them, for some reason, because it's not even on the ground the truth, Israel is the white man, the colonizer, and the Palestinians are the oppressed brown man. So then they tie that. So, and I say it's not true because actually European Jews the minority in Israel. But if you follow whether the Muslim narrative or the leftist narrative, you would think that Israel is just a white European Jewish colonized country, but it's not. Now, and then forget about the whole indigenous actual argument. You know, the people, it's funny in Australia, they talk about the indigenous Australians, the Aboriginal, and they talk about 65 or now I think it's up to 75,000 years of tradition. But then when you talk about Israel, they don't want to go past 1948. They won't talk about, you know, biblical times, which is only a few thousand years ago. Suddenly indigenous rights doesn't matter. But we're digressing. The point is that you have 2 billion, then you have the leftists, and then now it's kind of it's always been there, but it's in recent times, all since October 7, there's been this rise in the right, the fringe right, which were like neo-Nazis that everybody used to mock before October 7. But somehow in the last, you know, since October 7, they've grown and they've become, at least online, more brazen, more accepted, the Danvers area. And so now you've got these three groups, right? And the average person sitting at home who is sensible, who is kind, compassionate, who doesn't just hate people for no reason, is being fed, even if they don't watch the idiot box every night, the BBC every night, where they're feeding them subliminal, hateful messaging about the only Jewish state, even if they're just on TikTok or Facebook, you're getting fed it everywhere because it's the media, which ironically these people claim that the Jews own the media. Dude, if the Jews own the media, they would not be getting the rap they've been getting since October 7. Like on October 8, BBC was refusing to call. I remember, like I was in Israel on October 9 or 10, and I was hunting the BBC because they were refusing to call Hamas a terrorist group. I couldn't find them because I was probably too close to the fire and they were hiding. But the point is, the media's completely anti-Israel. Every once in a while you might get a positive story, but it's the vast majority is not. Then you go on social media because of those numbers that you have, the 2 billion Muslims, the left, and now this new right, that you can't help it. You can't escape it. My own kids can't escape it. You know, they ask me questions because they're getting fed on their TikTok algorithm. And I don't even think it's necessary. Like, I think the algorithms are skewed, especially something like TikTok, but I don't even think it needs to be that skewed because there's so many people feeding this content that you can't help it, that after a while, somebody tells you a lie enough times, you're going to believe it. And you're at least not, like, it becomes hard to argue it when somebody says genocide, apartheid over and over, and starvation, like all these buzzwords and these smears and these complete fabrications.
Well, I'll tell you what I thought. So every time I hear the word genocide, I'm thinking, if the IDF did want to completely erase Palestine, it would take them one afternoon.
100%.
And the conflict's now 2 years in. So obviously I'm not out there, I can't see it, but I spoke to plenty Jewish Israelis and they've said there is no genocide out there. And then when they've said that, there's massive backlash because people are saying there is, people that haven't been out there.
Well, what's funny is it depends who you ask. Like when you ask a leftist, and I do this when I'm out on the street and because I know what they're answering. When you ask a leftist, okay, so when did the genocide start? They won't say it started on after October 7. To them, they say that the genocide started in 1948. And so that's great because I go, okay, then mathematically there's you can't even argue that because it makes zero sense because in 48 there was hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. In 2025 there's millions in the same land. So mathematically there cannot be a genocide. Genocide, you know, a population cannot grow during a genocide. But then beyond, and even the numbers within this period, it doesn't add up. But if Israel wanted to commit a genocide, like you said, they could do it in an afternoon. But also, why would they go to such painful tactics for themselves to avoid killing people? Like putting out, dropping leaflets to make people leave, to build safe zones and camps and corridors for them to leave, SMSs. Why would they vaccinate against polio if they wanted the people to die? Why would they feed them? Why would they do any of that? Why wouldn't they just drop a massive bomb when people are there. You know, like the stories make, if you're a critical thinker and you listen to any of the stories, you know, like you've got this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. That's the American-led, so they took it off the UN to distribute the aid. And the reason why they did that is because the UN was completely overrun by Hamas in Gaza. And we saw that on October 7th, the UN was forced, while first denying it, at least they admitted to at least 12 of their own employees literally took part by breaching into Israel and butchering, raping, beheading Israelis. That's of their employees. So at some point, when the Americans and with the support of Israel took over the distribution, so that then suddenly, and they didn't want that, so they sent out the messaging that this is all a plan to help Israel commit its genocide by, this is the story they tell you, by then forcing people to these humanitarian hubs so that they can shoot them. Now, if you look at that, listen to that story and play it out, you know, play it out longer. Like, so what you're telling me is they've taken all this money, the Americans, to basically create a trap like rats or something, like you're going to drag all these innocent civilians to come to this spot so that you can shoot them one by one. How does that make sense when... Why would you waste money on that? Why would you do it in the one place where there is people filming and all, like, why wouldn't you just go and bomb the crap out of heavily populated areas, which they're not doing? Like, if you look at Gaza, if you look at the destruction, you would think that due to the amount of damage, the death would be far higher. So, for example, Israel has dropped more bombs in Gaza than people who have died. They've dropped more bombs on Gaza than people that have died. That means less than one person per bomb. If you want to commit a genocide, that's like the worst genocide ever. Like, you can't even hit a single person, which just proves that they're targeting infrastructure. They're clearing places out and they're targeting the infrastructure and they're targeting terrorists. Yes, people die in war. It is horrendous. But you know how quickly that could end? And I'm like, they've made us sick of saying it. But all it takes, if somebody really wants that war to end, is release those hostages. Just release those hostages and surrender. But you know what? I would say, forget about it, even like the surrender part. Because if they just release the hostages, I think Trump would almost force them to withdraw out of Gaza, I believe. I might be wrong. But there's two conditions that's been from the beginning, and that's release the hostages and surrender. I don't even think they had to surrender. I think that I don't think they should ever hold power then. I don't think Israel should give in on that. But I think that if they had just released the hostages, due to the world pressure, they probably would have been forced to end the war.
Well, while you were saying that, it reminded me that recently 6 Hamas leaders have been taken out the game, eradicated.
Yep.
They're all now dead. What kind of a backlash do you think the West is going to receive for that? For 6 figureheads of Hamas being taken out?
If you look at this war, like people talk about just Hamas and that. If you look at the war since October 7, so the taking out, forget about Hamas. Look what they did with Hezbollah. Look what they did with Iran. And Syria ended up falling because of that as well. No matter how you feel about it, it's just because it's Hezbollah, their fighting force, which, by the way, butchered a lot more Muslims than anyone, but nobody seems to care about what Hezbollah did to Muslims. So what's the backlash going to be? I think now
it's more of a prediction than a question. It's just
I think
because we're all on tenterhooks, aren't we?
I think people are just selectively outraged from those 3 groups again, pretending running into bat for Hamas terrorists that are not going to be missed, that are haven't been helping anyone but themselves. They've been sitting in luxury in Doha. On October 7, they were watching the films of people getting butchered and they were praying and they were celebrating because they thought they were untouchable. I think finally Israel sent a message going, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're a terrorist, we're going to get you. And they brought it on themselves because they declared war on October 7. Then Hezbollah joined in because they thought they were on the winning side on October 8, literally a day after, before Israel even started firing back. Hezbollah joined the fight. And then one by one, Israel's been taking out the threats to our entire Western civilization. That's the thing people don't realize, or a lot of people don't realize. I think somebody like Tommy Robinson gets it. And he's got it from the beginning. And that's why he's been so consistent throughout. That's why you haven't seen somebody like Tommy waver on this issue. They say it's because he's paid, but it's not. Because if you've been following Tommy, his message from the beginning, it's never changed. The people who have changed are suddenly now claiming that Tommy's the one getting paid. When, like I said to you before, I don't necessarily even think that they're getting paid. It's just too tempting to jump over to the other side. But I knew Tommy would never do that. And it's funny because the Jewish community, I remember I used to get a lot of backlash back in 2017, 18, 19, when I was, standing, there's a famous article that the lefty Jewish stupid publication, Jewish Chronicle or whatever it's called here, tried to smear me. I also took my personal life, and it's always republished by the biggest Jew haters. Like, Jewish Chronicle, if you're watching this, every Jew hater shares your stupid article to make a point. Maybe realize what you're doing. It's like the Israeli publication Haaretz. It's like, it's not read by any Israelis. Or it's dedicated, their entire, and I'm not saying Jewish Chronicles like this, but their entire market is Jew haters. And their content's always shared because they're like, you see, even the Israelis, or in this case, the Jewish Chronicle says this about Avi Yemini, it must be true. They're talking about the Jew. But I used to get a lot of crap for defending Tommy. They're like, oh, you don't realize he's a racist. He's going to turn on the Jews just like they all do. And you know what? I was a bit naive at the time because a lot of the people that I probably did give excuse some of their blind hatred to people because they were saying things I liked, they turned out to, totally jump on the anti-Jew thing when that became popular. But I never stuck my neck out for them like I did with Tommy, because Tommy I always knew. I knew him personally, but I knew his message was, and it doesn't mean everything he always says is right. There are, and I hate when people qualify their support of somebody, because people do that to me all the time. Oh, I don't agree with everything you say. And I'm like, give me one thing you don't agree on. There are things that I've in the past looked at where Tommy said, I'm like, I'm not necessarily into. But his core message and his core beliefs and the things that he's really known for fighting for, he's been 100% vindicated right the whole time, and he's never shifted. And if you look at Tommy's trajectory, like there were points when he had the big Facebook platform, everyone wanted to be his friend, everyone was jumping on his coattails, and he was like at a peak, but then they ripped it off him and he was deplatformed and they tried to unperson him, and all those people who are the same people that shift their beliefs, they all disappeared. We were still all around Tommy. I watched him all through that, and he just did what he could on, things like Telegram, but his message was never changed it, never turned against the Jews, even though it would have been the easiest thing for him to turn against the Jews, because the Jewish establishment always turned on him, always demonized him, they even demonized me just for being that Jew that stood up publicly. And then he kept going. And then today, a vast majority of the Jewish community, I see Tommy Robinson content being shared all the time. And I get messages from people who tell me, dude, I'm sorry. I thought you were flirting with Jew haters or potential Jew haters or racists or whatever. And Tommy Robinson was right about everything to do with these issues. And when I'm talking about these issues, I'm talking about the radical Islam and the threat that it poses to the West and its unholy alliance, because he picked up on that early, with the far left.
Before we move on to the threats that you've received and the persecution that you've come under, it's probably important that I just slip in at this stage that I'm very much on this subject the student in the room. I'm no expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just very intrigued as to how there could be so much conflict and hatred in the world. But from my lived experience, and I've met and sat across the table from many, many Jews, practicing Jews, and I've not met one that doesn't seem reasonable, family-orientated, business-minded, kind of nice people. But with Hamas, for me, as a regular thinking guy, layman's terms, I just can't imagine Hamas occupying a piece of land and thinking, we'll just leave it there. I think they're going to be on to the next. So that's how I
That's what happened. So in 2005, when I was first joined the army, they dragged the Jews that were living in Gaza. My own uncle, he had big orchards, largest orchards in Israel at the time. That there was a promised land for peace, and all the Jews that were living in settlements in Gaza were being forcibly removed from their homes to give Gaza to the Palestinians at the time, and then there was supposed to be an election, right? And so they disengaged, and they literally dragged them out. You can look on YouTube and find the videos where they were dragging them out, Jews one by one, out of Gaza for the promise of peace, land for peace. Now, land for peace has traditionally worked in certain places with Israel. That was the thing with Israel. They made peace with Egypt, land for peace. They go back to Sinai. With Jordan, they did it. So there has been land for peace deals that worked, but not with the Palestinians. So when they left and they gave the Palestinians Gaza to rule for themselves, it was essentially a de facto Palestinian state. What did they do? They voted in Hamas. Then Hamas butchered and they annihilated their political foes, which were just a different breed of terrorist. But they got rid of them, they were more secular terrorists, whereas Hamas, their charter was completely Islamist in their original charter, which I love to bring up to leftists who try to defend it. And they'll say to me, oh, have you read their updated, charter? And I'm like, yes. Like literally last week, this is what I said to a leftist who made that, like to my face, made that argument. Like, have you seen their updated version? And I asked him very politely, can you tell me what they updated in the new version? Mm-hmm. Because what they updated is they removed the thing of hunting down Jews around the entire world, not Zionists, not Jews, and killing them. So they were given that. And what did they do? They voted in Hamas and they created a land of a terror infrastructure to be able to go and hunt down, to take them all. So they obviously won't. If you give Hamas the land, they're not going to. They don't want peace. They just don't want Israel. They don't want Jews. That's their fundamental problem. I pray for one day for there to be a Palestinian state just side by side with Israel. I think the vast majority of Israelis or Jews wished for that. Is it possible now? Probably not. It's the last 75, 80 years, everything that's happened and where we've landed today, it probably just is not possible anymore. But we'll see what happens.
You mentioned the word Zionism. So over here now, it seems to me like if you go on X, you get people calling you a Zionist as if they may as well be calling
a dirty
you,
word.
They may as well be calling you a terrorist. So define Zionism for people that don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because a few years ago, when people used to scream that at me, I remember in the COVID protests, so there was always one person that would scream that out, and then I would run up to him with the camera and go, just tell me what it means.
Well, I get called a Zionist. I don't even know what it means.
So a Zionist, like in short, is anyone who believes in the right of the Jews to have their to self-determination in their ancestral homeland, which is Israel, according to the Bible. Whether you are religious or not, you can look at that as a historical reference. Yep. Essentially, it's an Israeli patriot. Anybody who believes Israel has the right to exist in that land is a Zionist. That's all it means. So if you just think Israel deserves its right to exist, has a right to exist, you, by definition, are a Zionist. So you probably are a Zionist, but it's not bad. What's wrong with that? Is there something wrong with being a British patriot?
No, but that's insane. I mean, the way you've explained it to me in layman's terms, I now fully understand the meaning of the word, because if I'm honest, I didn't really completely comprehend it. So I think it's absolutely insane that we're dealing with a demographic of people out there that have watched my podcast, for example, watch me interview, say, 4 or 5 Jewish individuals, and then they target me and call me a Zionist, but as if the word is insulting.
Yeah, exactly.
As if the word's insulting.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are dealing with a mental health issue amongst the left.
It's not even amongst the left anymore, but it's they have Trump derangement syndrome. They have Israel derangement syndrome. It's the same thing. It's a sickness, and it's a brain rot, and it's affecting a lot of groups of people. But again, it goes back to the 3 groups that are kind of all perpetuating the nonsense, pushing the story. Like, and they all have the same, like they all use Zionist as a dirty word. They all define Zion, like they can't define it. And when they just define it, it's some bullshit term.
Yeah.
Look it up. A Zionist is simply a patriot of Israel, or somebody, not even a patriot of Israel, somebody who supports Israel's right to exist. Even if you believe in a two-state solution, most Zionists prior to October 7 probably, I would guess, believed in a Palestinian state. They believed in a two-state solution. The fact is, if you're not a Zionist, why? Why do you think Israel has no right to exist?
Is there a solution, do you think?
If so, there has to be.
The $1 million question is
what is it? Look, I don't know. The status quo, and it's changing. The Middle East has changed since October 7, and I think on October 7, a lot of people thought Israel was going to potentially fall at some point. Like, it was crazy what happened. But since then, Israel, on October 7, they dropped the ball, and that, that's all going to come out in time because, believe it or not, Israel is a robust democracy, and the inquiries that are to come are going to be big. And when you're talking about a population in Israel where it affected everyone, people are going to have to answer for what happened. But since October 7, because of that, Israel has then shifted the Middle East to the terrorists no longer running things. And we're seeing that. So there is going to have to be a solution. I hope it's sooner rather than later. But I could not tell you what it is. I can guarantee you Israel's, whether you like it or not, people who use the word Zionist as with a negative connotation, Israel's going to exist. And, they may be losing, and they are losing the PR war at the moment. But guess what? If I have to pick which war we win, the war, the PR war or the actual war, I'll pick the war every bloody time, because what does it matter if the world's sympathy is with you if you don't exist?
Have you come under further attacks since October 7th?
100%. Oh, like it's exploded. For me personally, it exploded. Like it's crazy.
Any specific examples?
There's a lot. Like I've gotten more death threats than I've ever got. I've gotten like stuff that's not good. Like,
I mean, this is serious stuff.
Serious stuff.
Actual credible threats to your life.
100%. Yeah, and we had to invest, I think, $50,000-$60,000 in home security. Like it's not good. I never thought I would see Australia in the position that it's in today. In fact, when I used to come here in 2017, 18, whatever it was, I was like, oh man, the UK's really screwed. Like, we're not like that here. But today in Australia, in Melbourne, Australia, yeah, we've reached it. And I honestly don't know if I would last there. Like, if the trajectory we're heading on in Australia, like I'm there fighting the good fight now.
Yeah.
And I'll give it everything I got. But one day, I don't know. I don't know if I'll survive. Like, and it's easy for people to sit back at home and watch and go, oh, Avi, you can't give up. You're going to run away from the fight. And I get that from people. It's like, live a day in my shoes. Live a day when you've got those three major groups
attacking you,
targeting, hunting you, and then so much of the rest of the population is either too scared to stand up and defend you or apathetic because it's not them. And at some point, like right now, it's not that point. But if we continue down that road, what am I going to do? Like, I'll have a choice between hiding in Australia and, getting away only in armoured vehicles, or getting the hell out of Dodge. And I fear, with the direction we're going on in Australia at the moment, I don't see how we're coming back from that unless people rise up. But hey, what we're seeing happen now here, and Tommy Robinson's protest, where the people are realizing and pushing back, and it's rubbing off in Australia. In fact, in Australia, there's protests announced for the same day, or there was for the 13th, which is inspired by what Tommy's doing. But there was a protest just a couple of weeks ago where people are rising up. People are saying, hold on, something's not right here. So I'm hopefully I'm speaking from a position of fear because, hey, like I am only seeing the world from my position, and I've got wife and kids, and I've got to walk the streets, and I've got to walk the streets with them, and I've got to live in my body. So sometimes, and that's why I say I'm nothing like Tommy Robinson, going back to the beginning, because Tommy's way braver than me. I don't know. He seems to just be able to walk around and live with it, and I don't think I can do that. I'm not Tommy Robinson.
Do you wake up some mornings and think, I may get murdered today?
Look, I avoid going to that dark position, but do I think that my life could end in that way?
You put yourself in the firing line.
You know what? I'd be lying if I'm not scared of that. I would be lying if I'm not scared of it. And that's why I look at somebody like Tommy and I go, he's way braver, because, they've physically tried. I've witnessed it.
I think you're selling yourself very short, mate, because I think your average Joe that watches your work would think, fuck doing that. They wouldn't do it, mate.
I avoid thinking about the consequences until they come knocking at my door.
And here's a question. Who's your biggest threat, the Liberals or the Islamists?
Well, no, the three groups, right? Again, it's those three groups. It's the Liberals, the Islamists, and the Nazis,
and the
right?
FNATs.
Yeah. I would say Islamists, but I don't think the other two are far off. And the Liberals are useful idiots to the Islamists. They're probably too cowardly to do it themselves, so they would feed the if they knew where I lived, they'll feed it to an Islamic extremist, because they'll probably be too scared and too aware of the kind of backlash of doing something like that. But I wouldn't put it past any of those groups. And what I was saying to you is, like, those Nazis are so similar to the thing, because like a couple of years ago when I was reporting on them, and we went to a protest, and they were dressed the same, and I pointed out to the Nazis, I go, you look the same. And in fact, they both were screaming Free Palestine at me. So like the horseshoe theory, they're like the same. But only one group got violent to me. One hit me with a pole, and that was Antifa. But that's because they had big numbers. And at the time I said, I just pointing it out. Like, I interviewed these self-described Nazis, and I did say to them, at least he's talking to me. The other side just got violent. But I did point out, Tom, I wonder how they'll be when their numbers grow, if their numbers will grow. If they were like Antifa and they will turn violent, and they have, and they've turned into Antifa exactly the same, because now when they think they've got the numbers, they get violent. And
how violent do Antifa get in Australia? Because America, they're radical. Over here, well, I don't think anyone really takes them that serious.
Well, so in Melbourne, they've got numbers. So just like that, like when they have numbers, they'll do anything. So they'll turn proper violent. And they're doing like terrorist kind behaviour where they'll target, burn places down. Like, they'll do all that kind of stuff. And they're escalating. All those radical groups, I believe, are escalating. Well, the Islamists have always been, and they're ready to go. But those other two extremes on the political spectrum, they're escalating.
And who do you think the police are supporting in Oz?
The state in general is coming down extremely hard on the Nazis because they're low-hanging fruit. So they're passing all this new legislation meant to be in the Jewish community's name, which only hurts Jews because everybody gets resentful, and the laws are ridiculous. They're censoring free speech in the name of the Jews, but they won't actually apply any of these laws and this legislation or legislation they already have against the Islamists or the left, but they'll throw the book at the Nazis because nobody likes Nazis. And then they can claim they're doing something to protect the Jewish community. So they go for the low-hanging fruit, the neo-Nazis that the left, the right, every rational person hates. So they'll throw the book, they'll throw these guys in jail. They're doing it. They're going after them. But they won't apply the same legislation, the same rules, the same heavy hand against the far left that has been doing the same thing now for years. And then don't get me started on the Islamists. Just look here, like we said, at those riots, those Islamic gangs were running around armed. How did the police react? It's the same in Australia.
What support do you get and who from?
A bunch, to be honest. I got loyal supporters. And when I need help, they have every single time without fail come to my defense. They come to help me, whether it's, like I said, I had to put in $50,000 or $60,000 of home security. I don't have that kind of money, mate. When this kind of hit on October 7th, it was full on, intense. And you don't even have to look at my DMs. Don't get me started there. But look at the comments. And it was insane and threatening and just straight up crazy. So I put the call out to my supporters going, hey, I need to protect myself, my family. And yeah, raise money easily to do that.
What about emotional support?
Mate, I got a good wife. Honestly, I haven't had the best personal life, and people love to talk about it. My haters from all sides like to skew my personal story, but I'm like an open book, and you can get it at rebelfromthestart.com. I tell my story. I'm not, there are things I wish I could relive and do it again from a really young age. I have an insane life story. I was a heroin junkie. So there's things, but it's also what made me what I am today. And today I am probably one of the luckiest person. And I know it's cliche. I'm the luckiest person. I've got the best wife in the world. I do. She's straight up the most supportive person who puts up with me, but beyond puts up with me is always supportive, even if she's cringing, sometimes she's sending me messages but I think she's also made me a better person, a better reporter, better, because she makes really holds that mirror up to me. And she's like an Aussie. She's the first white Aussie I'd ever really been with. It's just she comes, but the reason why I say it's more the average person, and it's really cool because she's not a political person. She never was. And I bounce stuff off her, and her reaction is so typical. And it gives me, it's awesome sounding board because she does not want to just blow smoke up my ass. So she'll just tell me straight when I'm a goose or whatever. And she tells me that a lot. No, but do you know what I mean? I throw something at her and her reaction gives me it is a really good marker as to what the average person is going to respond to something. So support, emotional support, it's probably her, and I have close, tight-knit, I have good friends. You probably know that. You know that Sri Lankan? There's this Sri Lankan guy in Australia. He's I don't know why anyone
always in your videos.
Yeah, Rukshan, he's a good mate. He's been his wife's super, there's a real close, tight, but cut that bit out because he's you don't want to give him any credit.
That's what I like about you. You're a good friend to your friends, Avi.
Yeah.
And what? Tell me what you're fighting for. What's the number one thing you're fighting for? Why are you
I think it's changed. It's through the period. I told you, when it first started, ironically, it started with trying to set the record straight about what's happening in Israel. And we've done a full circle and we're back there again. But, at one there was 2019 where it was the fight for democracy. It's the same theme, freedom and democracy. So there was Hong Kong. We were doing the protests, the riots there. We were in the front line copping those rubber bullets and the pepper spray that I couldn't believe only a year later ended up being in Melbourne, again, about freedom and democracy when it became about the COVID overreach. And my state, Victoria, was Melbourne was the most lockdown city in the world, and the state was drunk on power and went totally nuts, and so many people just complied. So there was that at that time. If you ask me, it would be dude, this is the most. And then now we're back here where it feels like we're fighting, but it's all the same fight. It's fighting for truth, fighting for real justice, not the virtue signaling justice where it's who's higher on the victimhood ladder, who's got more victim status that we can. No, standing for what's actually right and just and true, no matter how unpopular it is. And I think the tide will turn. I think now we're seeing that pushback.
So truth and justice are sort of the two biggest things 100%. For you. Yeah, I fully am on board with that. Truth and justice. We're sick of being lied to by politicians. We're sick of being gaslit. truth is the only way that is going to set us all free, on starting from the nuclear family to the communities, to the country, to the world. You keep lying to the public, they're going to push back. They're going to dig for answers, and they're not going to like what we find. Before I ask you the final question, which is quite a loaded one, so
I love it.
Brace yourselves. Where can my audience find you? What are your social media platforms?
If you go to followavi.com, so follow avi.com, and it'll give you all my socials.
Yeah, we'll put all your social media links in there. And also, there's a lot more that we haven't covered that you can find in his book and on his YouTube channel as well. I mean, there's an insane Jim Jeffries saga. If you haven't seen that, you need to see that. There's some of his journalism. I said it earlier on, it's fearless, and I mean that implicitly. There's an incident where he goes into a hairdresser's because a lady's kicked somebody out for being Israeli, which is totally insane. There's a lot more to Avi. He's been very humble today, and I admire that.
I've been called a lot of things. A lot of things, everything.
You've been humble today.
Never been called humble.
You've been humble today. You've not wanted to take
it's
a great
it's
deal
your
of credit.
Energy, yeah.
Yeah.
You humble me.
Well, I should fucking hope so too. But my final question to you, Avi. Just take a sip before I ask you the final, because it's a fucking horrible question.
Yeah, go for it. I like horrible questions. Loaded horrible questions.
Okay. So if you do eventually get murdered.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What do you want to be remembered as?
Jesus, my wife is going to kill me just for answering that. I don't want to get murdered. So I'm planning on living a long life, and I guess the reason my drive to live so long is to piss off all my haters that would wish for the worst. But what do I want to be remembered as, no matter how long my life is I want to be remembered as the thing that I most respect, which is somebody that never shifted, never cowered, never changed my position because it was popular. And I think in the last couple of years, that's become the thing that I've come to appreciate most. And that's why I love the guts out of people like Tommy Robinson, because that, like, you can call me whatever you want. You can say whatever about my personal life or whatever. But if at least you recognize that I never faltered my position because it would get me some sort of clout or whatever, I'm happy with that.
And one last thing that I thought
You promised me that was the last one.
I did, but I also, whenever I see an Israeli discussion take place, I look in the comments and I see people saying baby killer, stuff like that. What would you say to people writing those comments? Because no one wants to see babies dead.
Yeah.
No one wants to see anybody dead. So what would you say to those people?
Not true. Not nobody. Terrorists do.
Oh, yes.
Jihadis want death and destruction. The leftists, they're happy. They may not be at this point willing to do it themselves, but they celebrate it when it's the right people. So there are people that do want it. I definitely don't want that. I want peace and freedom and democracy. I want freedom and democracy for Palestinians. The slur of being called a baby killer until October 7 was just ridiculous to me. I used to laugh it off. I don't laugh it off anymore because it is a libel, like a blood libel. If you know the history of blood libels in Eastern Europe, that's exactly what it is. It's like where they talked about that they used to say Jews used to kill the Christian babies to put in their matzah, which from Jewish law is just the most ridiculous. I'm not religious, but I know basic Jewish law, and I know there's kosher meat has to be, so animals have to, I'm digressing here, but they got to have split hooves and chew their cud, and they can't have any blood. You can't have any blood in any of your meat for it to be kosher. How do you eat human blood? Makes no sense. So, but the concept of blood libels is ancient, and it was that Jews are killing babies, and they're doing it for their own pleasure. Yes, there are children dying in the war. That is the horrific reality of war. There's also other horrific realities of this war, including the use of child soldiers from Hamas. Not every child that's killed is a child soldier, but there is a high there is a high amount of child soldiers. When I'm talking about child soldiers, you're talking about 15 to 19-year-olds that are carrying guns, shooting at soldiers or participating in the war effort on part of Hamas. Nobody wants to see dead children. I want to see children who are at school playing. You know, I've got kids. When you see a kid in pain, it's different than when you see an adult struggling. It's that innocence that cuts deep. So when somebody and when so many people today believe that you're a child killer because you fought or you volunteered in the Israel Defense Forces to protect, ironically, kids from being butchered from savages, it cuts deep because there are so many people that believe that libel. It's not true. To me, I think that every kid everywhere should be safe and secure. And the only way to do that is to rid the world of these savages.
I agree.
And when I say that, I'm talking about the terrorists, not people.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
And it's crazy that I have to say that explicitly, so this is not cut and taken out of context.
That's another thing that seems to be very popular now. People cropping people's clips to put it out of context, make them look bad. But yeah, fuck them. Well, we'll end this toast into peace. If you've enjoyed this conversation and you've enjoyed Avi's company, please follow him on all his platforms, like and subscribe to the channel. It takes you 2 seconds and it costs you exactly 0. And the bigger the following, the better the guests. And I can bring to you guests and conversations like this that the mainstream media will never, ever air in their wildest dreams because they haven't quite got the guts yet. Avi, a message to your critiques and people that dislike you. If they got to know you, they would. And I appreciate you coming here today, and good health, brother.